Remember how you loved the stories at bedtime about princesses and fairy godmothers? Well, you may want to hold on tighter to your teddy bear and keep that nightlight on, because these are not your mother's bedtime stories.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Not Your Mother's Bedtime Story. This is part 2 of Amy and Devyn's story. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, you might want to go and check it out first. But if you have, I'll let them all take it away.
We've had a lot of experiences in different, like I said, I don't think I've ever lived in a house in my entire life where something.
Well, Jenny's was haunted too. The lake house that she had. Remember the lady in the lake?
That was my niece. Yeah.
Saw.
Did you see her too?
Well, I saw it a separate time.
You did?
Yeah. I was like standing out on her porch and I just saw I don't know if it was the same lady Brianna saw, but it was like dark hair just like drooping over her face in a white gown, just like standing in the lake staring at me. And I was like, oh, okay. I just like turned around and walked back inside. But then Brianna had told the story about how she was swimming in the lake and came up and came face to face with that lady and like screamed bloody murder.
Man. So you guys are so calm about it. Like, this is not something to be calm about. There's like ring style people coming out of your lake.
You guys are really calm. Like I see men in mirrors and flower sifters are giving me bad vibes.
Stay away from the flower sifter. Your flower doesn't need to be sifted that bad. Just move it on.
This is what happens when you grow up in a household that people have experienced all these things. So my mom dated a man for a little while, and the entire time that she dated him, this was back when my parents were divorced, they saw UFOs like all the time. I still remember being over in Dover, over by the old Sawyer Mills stores over there, and they were flying like these round. They were literally above us on the roads. I can still remember that, thinking, this is really creepy, and they're being really nonchalant about the fact we've got UFOs above us on the road. And I have this memory of being upstairs sleeping one night. And now my mom in the meantime is down in her room and got woken up to this like ungodly, like buzzing noise. And then there were lights outside the house. And she said it was like this really annoying, like buzzing sound and the lights flashing. And she didn't even know what to do. I didn't know about this. I'm upstairs. And at one point I hear something on the stairs, like steps coming up the stairs. And then our 2 dogs started growling, and then all of a sudden it stopped. But my mother had also yelled out loud on that night too to, cut it out, and everything like just went silent. The dog stopped, but I didn't know she was experiencing something at the same time that I had woken up and heard someone on our stairs, and then the dogs growling, mom yelling, and then everything kind of just stopped. So I know that sounds crazy too, probably, but I'm yelling as I'm sure.
We're all like, nope.
Yep. Sounds perfectly
nope,
normal.
Doesn't sound crazy to us.
Okay. But yeah, we're pretty nonchalant because these stories have been going on forever. So I think I started to tell you the story about the Ouija board, and I think you were sharing what you kids say about me.
Oh yeah, that growing up, we were never told not to smoke or drink or do literally anything, reckless driving, and she was always like, just do not touch a Ouija board. Forever. I was like, okay.
Everything else is fair game. Just don't touch the Ouija board.
I never really thought about this until they were all saying
we need
this
like
one
a
day
t-shirt
recently.
or something like that. Do not touch the Ouija board.
Right. Don't touch the Ouija
You can stand on a car and play chicken, but just don't touch a Ouija board while drinking a 5th of Jack. It's fine. It's fine.
That passes.
And smoking at the same time, Gotta balance it out.
A beer on the car.
That's because my mom always was like, whatever. Of course, we touched them when we were younger kids too, but then weird stuff happened and we never did it again. But we just grew up with her kind of telling us, don't touch them. You don't know who you're inviting. You're never talking to who you think you're speaking to. You're just opening yourself up to any spirit that happens to be in the area, good or bad. And you don't want to do this. And that's when she went into, they never told us who Frank was until my grandfather died and they actually sold the house. And then she finally unloaded like years worth of stories about their childhood and all the experiences that everybody in the house had. And it all correlated with this random Ouija board that she found in the shed and started playing with by herself, which you're also not supposed to do. And every one of us is capable of playing it by ourselves, apparently, because I did try it as a child, even though I was told not to, just once or twice, but I could do it too. And so it used to talk to my mom all the time and said that, when she finally said, "What's your name?" And he said he was Frank. So like every spoof, everything that happened in the house, like, things would fall over. We'd all be at the dining room table because we always had our Sunday dinners after church at my grandparents'. So we'd all be around the table and, something would just randomly fall or crash or bang. And everybody just like casually look up and say, "Oh, that was Frank again." We're just little kids at the table the whole time. I'm thinking to myself, who is this Frank guy? But I did never ask. I don't know why we never asked, but we never did. But that, we would hear walking upstairs. Oh, Frank's at it again. They just things when we were kids all the time. We never really thought much of it until afterwards. And then they finally all started admitting that the house had been haunted. Although my grandmother, right up to her dying breath, insisted that she never had any experience in the farmhouse. She didn't believe, because she lived there after my grandfather died all by herself. And I was like, "Grammy, how did you live there?" And she's like, "I never had anything happen to me." So I have no idea. Apparently it didn't come. The genetics skipped a generation or something. So she never actually had any random experiences. But when she sold the house after Grandpa died and kind of subdivided the orchards and built up there, the people that bought the house was worse for them than it had been for my grandparents. They had a closet up in the middle room, which is the room that I was blocked. I think I told you earlier, where during a wedding party, everybody running around and throwing confetti, and I'm running, and I got blocked by, in my child's mind, was a gorilla. But we had people kind of do a reading on the house, and there was an old trapper. So I'm assuming that's probably the same thing. An old trapper probably would have looked pretty hairy and like a gorilla to a little kid. And that was in that middle room. This was the particular room in the back of the house that everybody that had a lot of things happened in this particular room. So the people that bought it from my grandmother, said that the closet in that room became the source of, if anything went missing in the house, they'd find it in that closet. But it really got dilapidated over the years. And we just had the privilege. We went with prayer beads in our pockets when we went. It was just up for sale recently. Somehow somebody bought it and was actually able to renovate the farm. It's lost most of the charm that it had. Most of the buildings have dilapidated and fell down over the years because they could never keep somebody on the job site to actually work on it. So somehow these people owned it. We decided we were going to go to the open house. Out in the shed, they finished the shed into a apartment. It's like it's a full kitchen with a bedroom. Yeah, creepy as heck out there still, though. Whatever is in that, it's out in that part of the house, definitely still there. I had like hair I had done so well walking in one room. There was the front living room. Ironically, the middle room that used to be haunted isn't even recognizable. They like knocked out walls and made like one big giant master bedroom in that space now. But downstairs, what used to be wasn't the good living room, but the other living room was a dining room. And my aunt and my sister couldn't even walk through the threshold of the door. It was so bad. Like they both like stopped at the door. I walked into it, all the hair on my body standing on it. But I was actually able to enter the room. Neither one of them were able to even walk through the room. So it definitely still has some stuff, but somehow whoever owned it prior, maybe they weren't sensitive. That's the only thing I could think of. They were actually they did the work themselves too. That's the other irony thing. It wasn't like a builder.
Probably really pissed off Frank. He's like,
yeah.
These people are not paying attention.
Absolutely. Because it was, but that's kind of a unique opportunity. Every one of us still have, if we have nightmares, they take place in that house, whether it's ghosts battling a demon that we can't see. I mean, we all have them. And that night I came home and I had my first one I've had in a long time. So I think this is just something that we've grown up with so normal that it doesn't seem weird to us anymore.
It's just, I mean, all that activity and then the shed, like getting the feelings in the shed and, Frank just breaking stuff all the time. It's like, damn it, Frank, and hiding stuff in the closet.
To contrast, though, too, I mean, what we talked about last week, that, the new owners of the farm have no issues at all with anything. But in this case, it seems like it still continues. And like you said, maybe even worse than what it was before.
Right. But they're not aware of it or sensitive.
I think I'm curious if the people who bought it now have had any activity, because it's not completely gone, but it was tamed down, I think, for that particular family. But my uncle's wife, when they were dating as teens, he had brought her home, and of course she had to sleep downstairs on the couch, and woke the entire house up screaming at the top of her lungs, because every cabinet door and drawer in the kitchen had started in the middle of the night, started opening and closing and slamming and shutting, and scared and that was happening to the new owners after my grandmother sold it too. That was one of the things that happened to them, was that the random doors in the kitchen and drawers would slam, and just like crazy stuff that would happen. My grandfather always,
Frank, not again.
Yeah. Well, there was I'm not exactly sure who Frank was, because there was more than one spirit in that house too. So we actually had somebody kind of give a reading about it. And initially they claimed that there was a couple that was trapped, one on the first floor, one on the second floor. The trapper, there was an old foundation on the property too. So I don't even know if he wasn't part of the original farmhouse, if he was from a time prior to it even being that big of a house. There was multiple entities in the house. So who actually Frank was, I don't know which one, or if he was even the one that was doing all the benevolent stuff to them, when they'd wake up feeling like they were, all the kids experience a feeling of someone choking them in the middle of the night. God. Yeah, they did. But my grandparents never experienced anything. So of course they didn't believe them, but doors opening, closing. One of my aunt's now husband's best friends stayed at the farmhouse when they were all in college, and he slept in that middle room, and he woke up thinking that my mother was standing in the bedroom ironing. He saw her as clear as day standing in that middle bedroom ironing. My mom hadn't even been there, so I'm not even sure how that happened, but whoever it was took on the image of my mom. And she said she slept in there in that room with me in a crib when I was an infant. And I woke her up screaming, trying to climb my way out of the crib. So I obviously saw something as a baby too. But we used to play, my sister and I played up there all the time. And we had weird things where it looked like a cat jumped through a glass window. They obviously had a farm, so there was cats everywhere. But so we just thought, well, that's weird. Where'd that cat come from? But we just thought it jumped through the window. So we would have things happen, but we were just kids. We didn't try to debunk it, or didn't even know enough to be frightened, I think is what it amounted to. So if we probably went back prying into our memories, we'd probably find that there's things that we remember that we're not even aware at the time was going on, but definitely some weird stuff. We rented a house before we bought our other house in Deerfield. That was the people that owned the house in Pittsfield owned this property in Deerfield. They were a cordwainer shop, there was a shoe shop, and then they had the original old house. It was like they had built a couple pieces onto it. So we were renting the old house. And before we moved over there, she hadn't even cleaned the house. So I was over there trying to get it ready to make the move over, because she had rented our house in Pittsfield out. They were moving in. And I'm in the house, and I only got the sense of this older woman. And I'm like, look, we have to live here, and I know you're here, so please just don't bother us. So, and I was sweeping, and the landlord came into the kitchen. Well, she must not have known I was there. And she came around the corner and threw whatever was in her hands up and screamed. And she's like, oh my God, you scared me. I thought you were the ghost. And I'm like, oh, so she does know about this ghost, right? She didn't know I was there. So she clearly had known the ghost was there. And then we moved in, and our living room on the front side, was the coldest room. For me, it was just cold. You'd go in, the hair on the end. I saw a man. I did the same thing to Bob in that house. I had a younger guy kneeling by my bed in that house. Casey was terrified to leave her bedroom at night because the attic stairs are right outside, and she would see or hear things in the attic. And Kylie used to wake up in the middle of the night and tell us that there were like naked people in the room, but they didn't have like all their body. They were like floating around. He'd come climb in. He was like 2. Yeah, he was 2 years old. He would wake us up and tell us this. I was in the kitchen one day doing dishes, and I looked out. It had one of the, the old farms had those big windows that looked out on this rambling, beautiful property. And I saw a guy and a woman holding a parasol at a different time, just like strolling across the lawn. I'm like, okay. Well, after we looked it up afterwards, she actually had a ghost tour type thing go through. There were so many more ghosts in that house than we even had any clue. Like they went through it and was doing a reading, and Kyle's room was like one of the most active rooms too, by the way. Like it was like full of little children. So he was saying they were floating and they woke him up, but there was like in that living room in the front that we were cold that had multiple ghosts in it. So like there was way more. There was a man and a woman that were both there. Like the old woman that I sensed initially, she's there for sure too. Like it was really interesting to see an actual ghost hunter type thing go through the house and I guess validate the stuff that we had experienced or knew. So that was really neat. But yeah, so Molly obviously knew it was haunted because she thought I was a ghost in the first place. So that was quite a wild ride. We lived there for a year. we everyone there had some sort of experience or another. But we still lived there. I was more afraid of the basement. Honestly, it had one of those old dirt basements, and that's where the washer and dryer were. Ugh. And that, you would think all these other things would scare me, but no, I'd go down in that old basement and I would just want to run out of there. Like I get so scared down there that I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And I'd run upstairs.
So you had to drag the laundry out, like had to wear underpants twice, turn them inside out.
Pretty much. I'm like,
laundry. I'm not going down there.
No, and I don't even know. I don't even remember if they ever said there was anything in that basement or not. I can't recall. I know like the old lady that I sensed, the first one, I didn't even know at first there was any other ones. It was really her. She was the most prominent that I felt when I let myself in the house for the first time. I just get a sense of an older woman. And I was just like, I know you're here, but we have to live with you. So please don't bother us. Kind of, that's what you're supposed to do. Kind of ask them to leave you alone and not harass you. So like all those other spirits, I didn't experience. Some of the kids did, but they left me alone apparently because I told them to leave me alone. Aside from that man who randomly one night decided, I don't know why they kneel at my bedside, but that's twice. Yeah, he was a younger kid. Yeah, there's nothing like waking up to a man's face in your face. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
I don't even like waking up to the dog's face in my face, let alone some random guy kneeling on the side of my bed.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, it shouldn't be there.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and again, it gives like a lot of credence. You said before, it's when you tell the ghost something and they listen, but the old lady didn't. And so it's like maybe the child ghosts or the children ghosts are more obedient. And like and maybe
that's true. I didn't even think of that.
Didn't listen to you. The trapper didn't listen to you because they're like, I don't take authority from you. So I don't know. I'm just trying to rationalize this and why you have so much success.
Well, except for all the random body parts.
But they didn't bug Amy anymore. Only the old lady did.
No, I
so
had
the random
no
body
idea.
parts went.
I never saw it.
It's like a carousel of body parts.
Well, he just said they were naked people floating around his room, but he said they were like missing their like lower legs or something. But he was 2, so I don't know if they were just floating too high. So from his crib bed area where he was sleeping, he still slept in his crib. He had a bed in there in the crib with the side down because he really didn't like to give up things. So he was sleeping. So I'm wondering if their level was just he didn't see the lower half of them possibly. Yeah. So he was, but they were. I don't know why they were naked. I still to this day don't know that.
I don't know if I want to get on that carousel.
No. But he consistently told us they were naked people in his room. So I don't know. It was quite interesting, though, to say the least.
Well, it definitely seems that you all you're definitely more sensitive within your family to picking up on things where maybe others are not. And even so now you said your husband Bob, he doesn't acknowledge it, or he hasn't had any experiences.
He doesn't, but he, if I was to say, so with the spirits, but then there's dreams that I have dreams that come true too. So if I say to him about a feeling, they say There was one time this is how I met his mother for the first time, because we were driving down somewhere in Massachusetts, and I just looked at him. I said, we need to get off the highway right now. We need to get off the highway right now. And he looked at me, and I'm like, I'm dead serious. Just get us off the highway. So this is how we ended up. It was snowing, and we were close enough, ironically, to his mom's house. So we pulled off the road, and we actually stayed at his mother's house. And there was an accident on the highway that night from the snow. So I don't know if that was a warning, or I just had this overwhelming, you have to get off the road right now. And he listened to me. He didn't question me. So like when things like that happen, he might think I sound insane, but he at least listens to what I have to say, because 9 times out of 10 there's some real reason why that happens. So if we say we've experienced something, he doesn't doubt us so much. He just doesn't tend to have any kind of abilities himself, I think, is what it amounts to. Whereas our kids all do. Like Sean has dreams that come true. He didn't tell us this till he was an adult, though. I had no idea that he actually had dreams that come true too. And he has feelings, and he's only recently, in the last probably 5 years, admitted that he's had. My dad didn't admit to it either. My dad saved my life when I was an infant. He came. I honestly think I was dying of SIDS in the middle of the night. He came flying awake and screamed, "There's something wrong with the baby." Woke up my mom, who got up and touched me, and she said I was ice cold. I wasn't. She had to pick me up and started shaking me to get me, and then I started crying. But he was sound asleep. He just randomly popped up in the middle of the sleep and said, "There's something wrong with the baby," and there was. So I think that we come from. I've got it coming from both sides, I think. So it's probably why some of the kids tend to be a little bit more sensitive than others.
I've had bad feelings before, and then during the day I'm like, I don't know, something's off, something bad is going to happen today. I can just feel it. And then ironically, both times one of my friend's family members I had found out had died that day. Either I had a bad feeling, and I was like, I don't know, there's something wrong with today, and I fell off. And then I woke up the next morning, and they're like, oh, so and so died last night, which is when I had gotten the feeling. And I'm like, oh,
there's got to be some correlation.
I knew that.
Yeah. There's got to be this.
So obviously your ancestors did not get on the Titanic because they knew.
No, exactly.
I think they said, forget this. We'll catch the next boat.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about sensitivity, and I think it carries on to other parts, not just spirits and ghosts or angels or dreams. Or we've all experienced. I had a guardian angel growing up as a child. I didn't know what it was, though. I'd wake up, I had nightmares. That house was my house I grew up in was also haunted, but it still is to this day, I believe. Nobody ever knew what was the cause. It was built on the house across the street was the oldest house in Nottingham, and they had a lot of Indian massacres and stuff back in the day too. I had nightmares about Indians my whole childhood, but I used to have horribly bad dreams, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and there would be this woman standing in the hallway, kind of light, but she had a face like my mom. She looked like my mother, but she just looked like she was just standing there all lit up. And I used to go down to my mom's bedside and wake them up when I'd have the nightmares. But this one particular day, I was I had a bad dream, and she's like, well, why didn't you come downstairs? And I'm like, well, how was I supposed to go through the white lady? And she's like, what white lady? And so I wasn't afraid of this white lady until my mother heard the story about the white lady always standing there. And then I got terrified of her. So I started sleeping in my sister's room, because then I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to see this white lady. And who is she? Then I thought it was a ghost. But as I got older, I realized she's actually a guardian angel. My sister saw her standing over my bed one night when I was in my troubled teen years, standing over me, almost praying. And it was the same exact description of the lady that I saw. So we now know about guardian angels. So there's definitely something to be said about just being sensitive to the veil. I think we're aware of both sides, and definitely things cross, whether it's, just a spirit saying hello or just something that can't seem to pass. I don't know which it is, or if it's just a memory. I'm not even sure. There's some, if it's just a residual.
We've seen the dogs after they passed before.
Yeah.
He told me to take out one of the dogs, and I went over to the dog bed in the living room, and it looked like he was sleeping there, and I like went to pet him to wake him up because he was like very clearly there. And as soon as my hand hit the dog bed, the dog like completely disappeared, and there was nothing there.
Those were our first. When we first moved here, we had 3 Boston Terriers actually, and yeah, we did. We used to hear for a long time. We'd hear because on these laminate floors, you'd hear their nails like when they try to walk, like their nails. And we used to hear them. We heard them for a long time after they passed away, and that was one. Yeah,
JR, we had him on. He mentioned having an experience with their pets that it was his wife's family's dog. I think that they could hear the dog when they would go to visit this dog that had
they could hear the dog. Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah.
We can't hear them now, but when they first we lost 2 of them like a year apart, and then the other one she lived for a long time. But those first 2 boys, each time they passed, we could hear their little feet. But Buster was the first one, and she did. She actually saw. She didn't just hear his feet; she saw him. She was more sensitive as a younger child. I think she actually saw things. Avery did too.
I think it's because honestly, when I got older, a lot of people didn't believe in ghosts, and for a while I didn't think it was like cool to like see them. Like I thought like it made me weird. So I was like, oh well, maybe if I just don't acknowledge that they exist, then they'll stop bothering me. Which actually worked. And now that I'm older, I'm like, God darn, I wish I didn't do that because now I don't have any cool experiences anymore.
Yeah, we've heard that before too, that, children are more sensitive and you have to nurture it. Because wasn't it Jenny or Vicky was told that about Jenny? Like, that's our cousin Jenny and our Aunt Vicky. I think it was a medium or something that told Vicky that Jenny was sensitive and, you can nurture it, or you can, if you don't, then it will fade and it will go away. I think, and she didn't. So yeah, Jenny doesn't, have that ability anymore. But I think it's something that, people are born with, or it's in, whatever, it's genetics, it's there. And if you keep nurturing it, then it will stay with you. If not, then it can kind of just fade away. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it definitely faded because I decided that I didn't want to see it anymore. Now I'm like, wow, wish I didn't do that. And the ghost activity that I mentioned in the beginning, I think it probably is always here, but because I never, my sister was the one that was like, oh, there's a ghost here, acknowledged every little noise and thing that happened, made it more prominent. Then when I was alone and didn't mention anything, it just suddenly wasn't here anymore. So I think,
yeah, probably.
I think probably, yeah. If you make it known that they're there, then they're going to be. It gives them an opening to be there, I think.
So the thing is, though, Devyn, so when you hear a noise upstairs, your first instinct is, it's a ghost, I'm just going to ignore it. It might not be. It could be that big fat squirrel, or, a rabid raccoon, or, some crazy from the sane asylum that just escaped. You might want to go check it out. Instead of just leaving it. I don't know how you could have just, gone to sleep that night and be like, oh, I don't know. There could be a raccoon party happening in my parents' room, and it doesn't matter to me.
She just Devyn, do we have a homeless person hiding out in my bedroom?
Right. Could be anything.
You just go look. I'm like, she's like, well, I don't want to. I'm scared. I want you to. I'm like, take Phoebe, which is our dog. I'm like, take Phoebe with you and me. She had to be on FaceTime, so I went with her up to check the room. Because
well, you called me after I went up there. I went in and I was like, Phoebe, go first. And I opened the door.
Because I was like,
Phoebe's like, hell no.
I'm like, can we just make sure there's not a squirrel? She's like, Mom, it was loud. It was a human. It was too big of a thump to be a little squirrel.
Yeah.
So,
That's even worse.
Human bud.
I'm just going to ignore that human. They're camped out in your bed. They're, it's
no.
Cool.
I told Casey.
Some guy in his underwear walks out.
Right, you come downstairs in the kitchen and there's some rando and his tidy whities making a pot of coffee.
I was there at 4 a.m. when you woke up to the dogs growling. It probably was. You probably had a homeless person living in my room for the whole week and nobody even knew. He escaped.
Best week of his life.
And everything he needed up there, I guess, except for the fridge. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm too terrified of people coming in the house. There's no way they get in. I lock the door. Sometimes my mom will go outside and all I hear is banging on the door. I'm like, oops, I locked the door.
That's me taking the dogs out for like their last potty of the night, and I get locked out because Devyn has gone around and locked the door, forgetting that her mother is still awake, and she's locked me outside. I don't like the dark. I am honestly terrified of the dark. I don't sleep in the pitch black.
I don't blame you. Again, you never know what's going to be at the side of your bed. I would be scared of the dark too.
Right, next time it's going to be the homeless guy in his tidy whities eating a squirrel dinner. I mean, I don't know what's happening up there. That's just crazy.
He's actually making himself a mixed drink and a joint in the kitchen while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, she has no idea. But she definitely was more sensitive as a younger child. And she probably still is as she gets older. It sounds like she's starting to, sometimes you just can't imagine things. You have to like kind of wonder what it was.
Well, it sounds like they're still attracted to you. I mean, even if maybe you're not, I mean, certain things are still happening to you. I mean, obviously the touch after, the ski incident, and everything. I think they're still attracted to you. So they probably still feel that, or if they're, if there's a light that they see or something, and, they're still, you're still that beacon for them, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true. They did talk to me a little bit, so I guess. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to have a new ghost story. I'm just putting that out there for anyone listening.
Just tell them we need more content for the podcast.
Well, I heard Amy. You want to go to Florida again, so maybe if you leave, then you give Devyn the opportunity.
And all the ghost party because I told them to knock it off. So see, I leave, and then they all act. Maybe if there is something.
The homeless man comes back.
Maybe there is something to be said about me telling them to knock it off, and they behave, and then when I'm gone, they all act like party mom's gone from the house.
Yep,
I don't know.
Mom's gone.
Yeah,
party time.
Maybe that's the little. Maybe it was jumping on my bed up there or something. Maybe. That would have sounded loud.
Well, it did. No, it fell off your bed. Like it sounded like you rolled off and fell on the floor. Like it definitely. I told Casey that you were like, oh well, go up there and see if it's a squirrel. There could be a squirrel in my room. And Casey started laughing. She goes, "That'd be one big squirrel."
We don't have a very quiet house. Let's put it that way. Lots and lots of activity. I haven't had a house. I said I don't think I've ever lived in a home that there wasn't some sort of activity. I don't know how that happens, but it just has. My mom too, and my sister actually. So either maybe we attract it. I don't even know what the answer is because
this whole time you've been talking, I'm thinking about. I'm like, geez, Amy, I don't know if I want you to come to my house. But maybe I do.
Just leave your flower sifter at home. Don't bring that flower sifter over.
Well, I have a flower sifter. Now I'm concerned about my own flower sifter. I don't know what's going on in my cabinet right now.
Please call this and tell me if there's something with it.
I have a house full of antiques, and I definitely can safely say I haven't bought any of them with any weird vibes. So, and I have a ton. I know how to decipher which ones we want, which ones we don't. We're really good at that. So, except for Mom with her wardrobe. That's why I really don't think it was the wardrobe. I think it just picked something up in the house. But that's
so I do want to come back to that. But so when you were, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when you were seeing these, were you seeing, did you know that they were ghosts, or did you think that they were actual people?
So I was just saying this today, my very first memory, okay, I thought it was a person. I still remember this as clear as day because I can still see. I came out of my nursery room, walked down the hall. My mom was standing in the kitchen at the stove. But in my memory, my mom and the stove seemed like, my mom is really tiny. She's only 4'9". But in this memory of this, she's like a giant. She and the stove are like gigantic, obviously, because I was little. And I came around and I said to her, Mommy, there's a man. And she's like, what do you mean there's a man? And I dragged her into my bedroom and I pointed out the window and I said, man, there's a man. And she said, of course, she can't see a man. So she's like, do you know who this man is? And she said, all of a sudden I went, oh, it's Grandpa. And my grandfather had just passed away. So I think it was my grandfather coming. And I do remember seeing, of course, something, but I said a man initially. So when I was that little, I was saying there was a man standing outside my room and went and got my mother. She couldn't see it. So no, I saw what looked like people. They actually looked like people. There was no determining whether it was real or not real.
I would agree with that.
Even
I've seen, I thought was a real person. Like, I know it's like a whole other long story, but that where Signs for Jesus is in Chichester, where that old house was, I had seen I got too scared at that house, and I made my mom let me go sit in the car. I was like little, like 5, and I remember seeing a lady, because we thought we were alone there, and I remember seeing a lady in the window inside the house, and I was like, Kyle, you need to call them. There's someone in there. Like, she was like just staring at us from the window, and I was like, Kyle, call her. Like, you need to call Mom. There's someone else in the house. She needs to leave. So and I was like freaking out, and I thought I was an actual person.
So what stood there initially was this really old house that this one was also taken down and sold to a historical place up, and they took, they labeled it. Thank God. I hope they took all the spirits with them, because my sister wanted me to come see it before they took it down. It was beyond, it had been sitting empty for years. So there was, they couldn't restore it, but they could take it somewhere else and kind of use parts of it. There were definitely like hidden where they hid. Obviously it was where they had hidden slaves, like behind the chimneys. There were like hidden places in the walls. So I went over to see the house, because we love, despite all this craziness, we really do love old houses. So I just love to go see them. And Avery saw my father. She saw my father in the house. I heard like this out of nowhere, just random music playing.
And the piano.
It would sound like a piano or an organ or something. And Avery was really little. She went running in the room and told him to stop. It was too loud. So she obviously heard it too. We did see a woman. We were upstairs. This one really scared me too, because there was so much activity. It was almost overwhelming.
It was overwhelming.
And so I had to send her out, because she literally was ice cold, like so cold, like she almost couldn't take what was going on in there. So my sister took her and Avery out of the house. So the rest of us were still in there. And we were sitting on, so they called me because I had heard something up in the attic. We literally downstairs and we heard something. So when we were starting to go up to the attic, we opened the attic door, and those movies where it gets so weird, where it's so cold you see your breath. This really happened. Like, we opened the door and all of a sudden we could see our breath. Like, I don't think I've ever experienced that before or since. And then my sister calls me on my cell phone at that moment in time and says, "Don't go up there, Devyn. Devyn just saw a woman and looking out the window." And I'm like, I think she's already come down the stairs, because we just opened the door. So she had seen the woman. She really was affected by the house so badly she couldn't even stay in it. But the kids and I were sitting on the stairs inside the house, and we were talking about like the stuff that was going on. And all of a sudden, this loud thud. I mean, like, angry thud came from upstairs, and we were the only ones in the house, and we all looked at each other, and I'm like, yeah, it's time to get the hell out of this house, because it was so scary, like so scary. I can't even, there was so many things, so much happening in it. So I'm wondering wherever it went. I don't know who bought it, like took it down and took it somewhere else, but I don't know if it stayed on the land, if it went with the house. I'd be curious to know that, though.
It was scary.
That was really scary. That was like all these stories I've shared with you. I know it sounds really weird that house scared me. That house scared me. I don't even know how to explain why it was scarier than others.
It didn't feel nice.
Yeah.
I feel like our ghosts here are just like pranking us. When we went there, it was cold, and it was just like overwhelming, and they felt real. Like, it felt like they could like,
I think
honestly, it felt like they could like hurt us, honestly, than like the ones here.
Yeah. I think there were so many. I think it might have been the numbers that caused like to be overwhelming. That would be my guess. I think there was just too much activity, and probably benevolent too, a little bit. That one was.
It'd be interesting to hear if that like property is associated with anything, because I've also heard that there's another house in Chichester that I've heard, like not far from there, that's kind of on that same road that people like move in and out because it's supposedly haunted too. It's kind of that longer house, like it's like not right past the library on that road. It's
not
like
too far.
It's like a barn and a home attached to each other. Right. It's very close to the road, but I've heard people move in and out because that house is haunted. So I'm like wondering if there was like something that's not very far from that location, if there was something traumatic that happened, like a battle or something that happened.
They could have, because like I said, there was definitely hidden places to hide slaves. Like the North was known for bringing the slaves up and then hiding. There was definitely like places in there where slaves were hidden. It could have been part of the railroad type thing too. So I know that was that had to have been scary as heck anyway. Just in general, I would think it would leave. But you're right. I'm wondering if there's something that happened there that maybe that whole area has it. It was definitely scary. That one, I know I laugh because we have all these experiences and we're so calm. But that house that really scared me. All of us, my sister and myself, we were all pretty terrified of that one. Yeah. That was when I didn't want to go back in and see again. I can say that for sure.
I wanted to go home so bad.
We looked when we were looking to move out of Deerfield. This actually, I take that back. This happened to me in a house in Londonderry. Bob and I had gone to look at a house in Londonderry, an old house, and I couldn't get out of there. It was so bad I couldn't breathe. I was like, I have to get out. I didn't even finish going through the house. Whatever was in that one was also the same. Like it was just like I felt like my chest was being, that pressure in your chest, and I was like, I can't even finish this tour. I need to get out of this house. And I said to the agent, I'm like, Bill, I don't know what's wrong with that house, but something is very, very wrong. And he actually admitted that he had a weird feeling in it too. So I walked in downstairs, I got up the stairs, and I turned right back around and walked right back out of the house and said, yep, no, we're not buying that house. There's something terribly wrong there. So I think when it's really bad, I think there's a difference between just like tricksters or just somebody alerting you than those type of houses for sure. I don't know how people live in them, honestly. And that's probably why that house you're talking about, people move in and out. I think there's definitely that would be the activity that they experience in those type of houses, I bet. You hear about it all the time. I think a lot of the movies are based on houses like that.
Activity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why I just wonder, like the research, going back to that dripping lady out of the lake, it's like, is there any story? Like, was there a drowning?
I think there might have been. There's no doubt in my mind there probably was. How would there not be at some point in time? I'm sure if they researched it. I think she did actually. I think they might have looked into it.
Thank you, and happy belated birthday, Devyn. Hope we didn't mess up your
happy birthday.
Hope we didn't mess your dinner plans up too much.
No, not at all.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Amy and Devyn for all of your stories. Those were doozies. Remember, again, if you have any stories that you'd like to share, email us at notyourmothersbedtimestory@gmail.com. But for now, take it away, Mom.
Thank you for listening. And remember to keep that night light on. Good night, sweet dreams.
If you have a story to share, please send it to notyourmothersbedtimestory@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at notyourmothersbedtimestory. And please help us grow by following us on your favorite podcast platform, leaving us a positive review, and telling a friend. Thank you for your support.